Morning, January the 2nd. I know it can be quite a heavy day, can't it? Especially if you're back at work, what with the festivities being over. Many people going back to work. Of course, daily life gets back underway and might not be as fun as time off over the holidays. But it can also be a time for change, can't it? January 2nd, you've got your New Year's resolutions, maybe big changes in your family. Did you know today is actually known as, and I don't want to depress you here, it can be known as Divorce Day. January the 2nd is Divorce Day. It's all down, apparently, to today being the first business day of the new year. And so for many people who have potentially struggled through the festive break, or they've been waiting for it to all be done and dusted before they take the plunge, it's the first chance after Christmas to pick up the phone, maybe send an email and get things underway. But divorce doesn't have to always be a painful, negative thing. Yes, it's obviously bad when things don't turn out for the best, but it's possible, isn't it, to have an amicable split. And with us now to talk about how you can achieve that should you wish to, and someone who can give us some uplifting, positive, practical advice and tips on how to save your marriage before it falls off a cliff, is the divorce coach known as Sarah Davison. Sarah, Happy New Year. How are you?
Happy New Year, Steve. I'm great. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I have to say, divorce coach sounds like a very heavy title. So what do you do? Tell us more, Sarah.
Well, I help people to cope better with the emotional roller coaster as well as the practical challenges you face with any kind of breakup, heartbreak, and separation. And yes, I know it sounds a little bit depressing, but actually, having been through a really tough divorce myself, that's how I got into this. I realized there was no specific help. There was no structure to helping you get back up on your feet. So I created lots of tools and techniques to get me through my own divorce over 15 years ago. And that's now what I share in my books, my podcast, and all the work that I do.
I get you. Well, we'll come on to some of those coping mechanisms and those pitfalls and more in just a moment. Do you think it's too easy to get divorced these days, especially with that introduction of the no-fault divorce?
Well, no, I think that we should all be entitled to make our own decisions and our own mistakes. So I think we spend a lot of time deciding, how we're going to get married, planning the wedding, the wedding day. And I don't think many people rush into divorce, Steve. I think there's sort of a belief that when no-fault divorce came in, people would be jumping into it, thinking, right, well, it's easy, let's do it. But people don't. I mean, I see so many people every week and nobody rushes into this. Divorce is known as the second most traumatic life experience we go through. And most people understand that and they don't want to rush into it. So I don't think that people jump to it. And if they did, they'd soon find out it's not quite as easy as it may seem.
Yeah. So divorce can, I know, quite often be seen as painful and possibly sometimes a negative thing, but actually it can obviously be a positive thing as well because, you can move on with your lives once it's happened. How do you keep it positive and amicable?
Well, I think it's so important to try to do that. If you have a healthy dynamic within your relationship, and maybe it's fizzled out, maybe you've just grown apart over the years, or maybe, as we saw with COVID and the pandemic, you've learned that maybe you're not best suited to each other when you have to spend lots of quality time together, and that's why this is divorce month. We have Divorce Day. January, there are more breakups, usually because people have spent so much intense time together. So you can do it amicably. I think number one is to have the conversation about keeping it kind and keeping that respect going, because even the friendliest, loveliest couples, when they break, there's going to be conflict because you are dividing two lifestyles. So I think up front, just acknowledging, look, when it gets tough, when we're not agreeing over things, how are we going to do that? How do we approach that? Because in the long run, if you have children, obviously, especially, you want to make sure that you don't damage the short-term relationship, because if that happens, you may damage it for the long term. And what we want to do is try and overcome those obstacles as they come. So being kind to each other, giving each other some slack, not reacting in the moment, I think, and trying to find some fair compromise where you're going to have to give up on a couple of things. But also it's about looking at the long-term picture. Where do you want to be in a couple of years? You want to have a healthy relationship with your ex, especially if those kids there. So how can you keep that in mind while you're trying to work out the settlement and the situation, like the living arrangements and things like that?
Not that I'm wanting to get divorced anytime soon, but I'm just writing all these down. Keep it kind, respectful, not reacting in the moment, compromising, etc., etc. Charlie's now panicking if she's listening to this, and I'm not. Don't you worry, my friend. I'm not thinking about that. What are the points that could be the flashpoints? The pitfalls that can so easily turn things nasty. Because if you know about those, you can see them coming, can't you? You can try to avoid them.
Absolutely. I think sometimes when lawyers get involved, that can get very aggressive. Now, one of the things that I see with clients is they come to me and say, Sarah, this is really upsetting me. The lawyers have got involved and now things have, it's like pouring fuel on the flames in some circumstances. And I think, there is a fear, there is a feeling maybe of a little bit of intimidation if you don't understand that legal jargon. It can be quite scary. So I think having the conversation with your ex beforehand, you may need to get lawyers involved, but still being able to maintain that communication. Because, if you take things too seriously, if things get on top of you, start panicking if you get lawyers' letters, that's really going to cause problems with the communication between the two of you. It may mean that you get into loggerheads and it increases costs as well with the legal situation. So making sure you set a budget for what you can spend on the legal side as well would be absolutely key. It can get out of control. So those are things to watch for.
I was just about to say that, actually. Yeah, once you end up going down the legal route, it can very easily spiral, and that just adds extra pressure.
Yeah, and I think, divorce doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to destroy children. It doesn't have to destroy your relationship. And it's knowing that there are a lot of people that get through it and stay friends. There are people, obviously, Gwyneth Paltrow, Just Conscious Uncoupling, where she managed to stay good friends with her ex. They even went on holidays with new partners. That is quite extreme, I will say. I do think that's quite extreme. There are many people I know that can do that. But obviously, if it is possible, then that gives you the hope. And I think, looking at how you can manage that, how you navigate that, and creating that, keeping your support team close as well. You will need your own support team to get you through it. So that's friends and family that really will support you. If there has been an affair or betrayal, that's where things get tricky, because sometimes even the best meaning friends and family can make things a little bit worse because they're angry too. They've been betrayed, or maybe they accepted them into the family and then something's happened where they feel that their trust has been broken too. So I think having a good team around you who can support you emotionally, can keep you focused on, this isn't the end of your life. It's the end of this chapter.
Yeah.
And who do you want to become now? This is, New Year's resolutions are a great time to sort of reassess what you want more of, who you want to become, what you want to do more of in your life as well. So it's a good time to get back to basics, detox out the stuff you don't want anymore, and focus on what are the things you can do now to create a future you're truly excited to move towards.
Yeah, definitely a positive message there. Just finally, how common is it for marriages to fail these days? I'm not across the most recent stats.
Well, it is 50% of marriages end in divorce, so that is pretty high. But there has been a decrease in divorce rates recently. Last year, there was a drop of 30%. And I think, though, unfortunately, I don't think it's because less people want to get divorced. What I think I'm seeing in my clinic especially is that the financial crisis has actually meant that, whilst it puts pressure on relationships and people may want to break up, I know that there's been some research that says that recently over 50% said that they are experiencing friction in their marriage because their mortgage rate has risen. But 32% also say that they're staying in the relationship because they can't afford to live alone. And I think, with inflation, interest rate rises, it does put more pressure on families because they can't afford to, sell their house right now. Prices are dropping for houses. So it's not a great time to get divorced because actually the settlement's probably not going to work well for either party. So a lot of people will be staying together during this. But again, that could give you a chance to reignite that spark and consciously recouple and do things to try and improve that relationship. So, wherever you're at, there is help. There are things you can do. So, I don't want people listening to think, gosh, this is a bad situation, because yes, it's difficult, but you can learn from that. You can become stronger. And a lot of times people go on to turn that pain into their power and actually go on and actually become stronger from what they learn.
Brilliant. Great to hear your positive vibes on the show this morning about something that, as I say, could be quite depressing and a little bit negative, but at the same time, like you say, you can always turn it into a positive as well. Sarah, great to have you with us this morning. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks so much.
Take care, and Happy New Year, by the way, as well. That's Sarah Davison, the divorce coach, talking about what you need to do, really, if you are planning on getting a divorce, how you can hopefully keep things kind and respectful, not reacting in the moment, compromising as well, and just keeping an eye on that.